After some time, the Katyusha from the People's Volunteer Army is retaliating with their own firepower that hits most of the American forces from afar to create a diversion to continue fixing the military bridge and cross the path towards Kumsong Front. The movie begins with a narration of two war veterans telling the story of a sacrifice of the Chinese army on July 12, 1950, as the Korean War broke out on a full scale. While on June 27, the American fleet sailed toward the Taiwanese ports of Keelung and Kaohsiung, carrying out a military survey, patrol operations, and military exercises to prepare for the war. Meanwhile, on September 15, the troops of American Army landed in Incheon, another place in China, where they marched north to wait for the United Nations forces. Thousands of aircraft of the U.S. Far East Air Force entered the Chinese territorial space warfare spreading to the Yalu River. China's territory and national security were severely threatened as the American forces kept advancing. They add that in response to the action on the invaders' part, as requested by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Chinese government, after deliberate consideration, decided to send their troops to North Korea on October 25. The People's Volunteer Army, the merged Korean and Chinese forces, engaged the enemy for the first time since they entered North Korea, starting the request to aid Korean allies against the Americans. He remembers that back when the People's Republic of China was just founded, the Air Force was lacking, and ammunition was in extreme shortage. Thus, when the fight started, there was a demonstration for consolidating the new regime and establishing China's international image. The stake was extremely high for both countries. By the year 1953, after periods of numerous warfare, the People's Volunteer Army managed to shift from defensive to offensive to fight against the American forces. While mid-July, the People's Volunteer Army launched the third stage action of the summer counterstrike, centered around the Battle of Kumsong. This would be the final combat where winning this battle would make them the ultimate victor in the war against the American invasion of North Korea. Meanwhile, an advancing division unit called the Yanshan Unit is tasked to reinforce the front line by covering the main force at the right flank in the general offense of the People's Volunteer Army. If they fail to reach the assigned location by 6 o'clock in the morning, the entire corps will have to dive into grave danger. He compares it to a hawk with broken wings engaging toward a pack of wolves, getting themselves in grave peril. The odds will be on the enemy's side, which will be direr for them. Another narration from the perspective of Xiao Hu, a young cadet at that time, shares that when the rapids of Kumgong River stood ruthlessly in their way of North Korea, a unit of soldiers was bound to meet the battlefield. The Yanshan unit aims to reach Kumsong Front using a military bridge. The commander orders his troops to climb up a hill while camouflaging in the grass fields as they listen to the bombings nearby their area. And adds that their squad leader is obsessed with being rewarded with a Medal of Honor after the final combat after the war and living a normal life. The 301, 302, and 303 regiments of soldiers are wearing a camouflage that resembles a muddy grass uniform to blend in the surroundings perfectly and are crossing the hills in a straight line while maintaining the camouflage. The Yanshan unit advances to the front of the battlefield to reach the nearby forest to continue traversing towards Kumsong. As American military planes keep arriving from their location to scout their location, they utilize their camouflage and blend with the surroundings to avoid being detected by the eyes above. The only way to reach Kumsong Front is by using the military bridge that the frontline engineer has created for military use. Meanwhile, while the troops are resting, Zhang, the second lieutenant, approaches Guan to inform him that he has been demoted from his position as the sergeant as he keeps wasting large artillery against the fast harbingers of American forces. While Zhang will oversee things such as the large artilleries and will be calling the shots from now on, as per the Army's general. However, the enemies arrive and immediately scare off the Chinese troops. Hill and Smith, two of the leading pilots of the harbingers of the American military, lead a small group of planes that keeps attacking the military bridge, thus making the crossing very tedious and hard to achieve for them. While the harbingers of the American military keep dropping multiple nukes and firing their bullets from above to attack the military bridge and forest. Lao Gao and the other Chinese commanders of the Yanshan unit blow the whistle to make all the soldiers stop and drop at the forest as they all hear the bombings nearby the Kumsong Front across the military bridge. Luckily, Guan and his troops have a clear shot of one of the harbingers and successfully take one down after the attack at the military bridge. They all rejoice while the plane goes down completely. While some of the planes retreat toward their base. The commanders order the engineering squad to rush forward and fix the military bridge to make it stronger to withstand enemy attacks. As soon as the military bridge is fixed, the 301 to 303 regiments take the opportunity to cross the military bridge where the enemies are not currently attacking. Meanwhile, after encountering the American military planes, Lao Gao orders his unit to advance further to send signals to the platoon at the Kumsong Front while providing support to the regiments below near the military bridge. They are also tasked to manage the military bridge as they are among the last units to cross it to secure the safety of all the other regiments. Lu Hao gets furious at Lao Gao as all they did for the army was fix the bridge. But Lao Gao tells him their task is important as keeping the bridge standing will lead all the other soldiers toward the Kumsong front. Another set of attacks arrives as soon as the other regiments cross the military bridge. A large set of flyers of Americans known as the howitzers emerges out of thin air. It drops several bombs to hit the military bridge and decrease the People's Volunteer Army's forces. Lao Gao orders all his troops to scatter and keep down to avoid detection from the eyes above. However, after the attack of the howitzers, the soldiers and the military bridge has been badly damaged. But the military bridge is still the main priority as the troops are needed to cross it to reach Kumsong front and assist the front lines. After the request and order to bring the Yanshan unit down to the military bridge to repair the military bridge, Lao Gao orders Lu Hao to take Xiao Hu and other soldiers to survey the area for any upcoming American military planes. Lu Hao brings a torch and several lights to alert Lao Gao of any incoming danger toward the troops and the military bridge. Later that evening, the other regiments continue to cross the military bridge while carrying heavy artilleries. The crossing soldiers are trying to boost the morale of the engineers that are strengthening the quality of the military bridge by saying nice words. Meanwhile, Lu Hao and Xiao Hu reach the top of the hill. They position themselves to watch over upcoming American military planes hitting the military bridge. However, the American military planes utilize the dark and fly silently around the cornfields to sneak in. At the same time, the People's Volunteer Army's other regiments are still crossing the military bridge. Zhang then notices that there is something odd. He blows his whistle to alert the other squad below that is aiding the crossing of the other regiments. Guan receives the message and prepares the heavy artilleries to protect themselves from the upcoming danger from the American military planes. But the American military planes show up once more out of thin air, which surprises the other troops who are unaware of the attack. Hill and his small group of planes barrage the military bridge and the cornfields where Guan and Zhang are positioned alongside their heavy artillery weapons. Guan and his troops are heavily hit by the enemies, as they all perish from the bullets and small explosions. But their heavy artillery still stands regardless of being barraged by the enemy planes. After some time, the Katyusha from the People's Volunteer Army is retaliating with their own firepower that hits most of the American forces from afar to create a diversion to continue fixing the military bridge and cross the path towards Kumsong front. Lao Gao and his troops take the opportunity to continue advancing toward Kumsong while aiding the repair of the military bridge. While the fight has recently stopped for some time, Lao Gao orders Lu Hao to keep watch of any upcoming American military planes to alert the advancing regiments. That same evening the advancing regiments continued to walk in a straight line at the bridge towards Kumsong front. But Lu Hao notices something strange, and he sends a Morse code using a strong flashlight to alert Lao Gao and the other commanders to be careful about one American military plane flying in circles around the military bridge and cornfields. But a brave yet stupid idea sparks from Hill to engage the enemies alone. That same evening, Hill disobeyed his generals to attack the People's Volunteer Army alone, repairing the military bridge and crossing it again. He then removes his helmet to not hear his generals and relies on his skills to take down the heavy artillery at the cornfields. He waits for an opening to the location of Zhang and his troops. Zhang wants to take revenge for his fallen comrades, especially for Guan. He prepares the heavy artillery and orders his troops to carefully aim at the dark. But he decides to light up their sides with fire surrounding the large artillery weapon to draw the enemy's attention. It successfully draws the attention of Hill to their location rather than toward the military bridge and the regiment advancing at the military bridge. Meanwhile, Lu Hao rushes below to warn Lao Gao and the engineers that the military bridge is in danger. While on the other side of the battlefield, Hill engages in a battle with Zhang's troops. An intense exchange of heavy bullets between Zhang and Hill starts while they fight in the dark. He finally blasts the rest of Zhang's troops and leaves Zhang heavily injured with a lesser arm and limb. Lu Hao panics and calls for Lao Gao, but as soon as he reaches the military bridge, numerous underwater bombs that the Americans sets off and make the engineers, soldiers, and equipment explode one by one. And unfortunately, Lao Gao's legs and guts got torn apart after the explosion. A bloody scene emerges as the explosion greatly decreases the number of soldiers and engineers that night. Lao Gao gives his last orders to him to prepare the materials to repair the military bridge. And Hill's sole operation to bring one American military plane is successful, as he flies forward to escort a large plane containing a larger batch of explosives. He is taken down by the injured Zhang regardless of having one less limb and arm to control the large artillery alone. But even though he is hit, Hill successfully escorts the large plane towards the location of the enemies to bomb the Chinese troops at the military bridge and nearby. The bomb then detonates in front of the bridge, burning every People's Volunteer Army soldier. Liu Hao shouts that he will not give up fulfilling his promise to Lao Gao and burns completely as if they are charred steaks. Meanwhile, the other soldiers hide from the blast, waiting for another set of engineers to fix the bridge to fulfill their mission to reach Kumsong before 6. The movie ends with another narration from an old version of Smith, remembering when they are assigned to take over the skies of North Korea while fighting the People's Volunteer Army. He explains that regardless of bombing the military bridge, the Chinese army reluctantly fixes it and even, at some point, uses their bodies to support the military bridge to keep it standing. The rest of the fleet arrives, takes no time and charges forward to reach the other side of the military bridge. Smith praises his enemy's patriotism and that they kept fighting the American forces to reach their end goal despite the disadvantages. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.